The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's Revelation.
I'm an American. I have rights.
What? Hey, everybody. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It is March 21st. Welcome to the podcast. A couple changes today. I'm going to get into a couple things. We got 40 headlines to get through, and we have a review of a globalist organization you need to take note of. So we're going to get into this and more coming up right now. Please take the time to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. All right, let's get into it for today. Is it Friday already? No, it's just Thursday. All right, let's get into the news. I'm going to start talking about the OECD because it leads into another story here. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development is an intergovernmental agent organization with 38 member countries, founded in 1961, and that's not really true. It was founded after World War II, and we'll get into that. To stimulate economic progress and world trade, and progress is the key word there. It says it's founded in 1906, but it was really reinstituted in 1961. To stimulate economic progress and world trade is the forum whose members' country describe themselves as committed to democracy and the market economy. And everybody talks about Davos and the World Economic Forum, but the World Economic Forum is really a party. I say a party as I mean in where the people that are involved in corporate governance, they want to talk, they want to obviously go to forums during the day and then party at night in Davos, Switzerland. But there are other organizations. Many people have heard of the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and a lot of these global groups. But you have to understand, after the Second World War, they built the New World Order at the time, which was based on a lot of these organizations around corporate trade. And because if you understand how global corporate fascism works and who the people that really supported people like Hitler and so forth and so on, you'd know that Standard Oil or Bayer Pharmaceutical were involved in Hitler's rise, because everybody's talking about Hitler now, but we will understand in short time here what exactly is happening, and this is going to tie into some other stories here. So let's go on. The Organization for European Economic Cooperation, the OECD, is a successor organization to the Organization for European Economic Cooperation, which was the seed for the European Union. Established in April 1948 among the European recipients of the Marshall Plan, aid for reconstruction in Europe after World War II, only Western European states were members of the OEEC, whose primary function was the allocation of the American aid from the Marshall Plan. Its secretaries general were the Frenchmen Robert Marjolin and René Sargent. It was headquartered in the Chateau de la Motte in Paris. Following the end of the Marshall Aid in 1952, the OEEC focused on economic issues. Its coordinating role was challenged after 1957 Rome treaties, establishing the European Economic Council and Euratom. The OEEC provided a framework for negotiations aimed at setting up a European free trade area to bring the EEC's inner six and other OEEC members together on a multilateral basis. In 1958, the European Nuclear Energy Agency was set up in the response to Euratom. And then they talk about taxation and stuff. But the real seed of this organization came out of the Marshall Plan. And then it talks about because it sets up a global tax plan. So they're basically taxing themselves, if you would understand that. So the global corporate governance set up after World War II was indeed about setting up free trade for multinational corporations. The OECD guidelines on multinational enterprises are set of legally non-binding guidelines, which means they make up the rules that people are supposed to follow. However, they're non-binding, so they really don't have to follow them if they don't want to. Attached as an annex to the OECD Declaration of International Investment in Multinational Enterprises, they are recommendations providing principles and standards for responsible business conduct for multinational corporations operating in or from countries adhering to the declaration, which is just about everybody. And then it goes on to talk about the documentation of OECD's multilateral surveillance. This is also important. So we look at this document here. Just bear with me for 1 second. Sorry about that. And as we look at sorry about that delay. So we look at now the documentation of the OECD's multilateral surveillance. Well, what exactly is this? This is something, this has to do with taxation. So if you're taxing multinational corporations that reside, let's say, in different countries, you understand that there has to be surveillance. How are you going to tax multinational corporations if you don't know what money they're making, what are their holdings, et cetera, et cetera? So the OECD's multilateral surveillance was systematically reviewed for the first time in multilateral surveillance. I don't even know what that is. Kumiharu Shigahara. Oh, this is an individual at the time. He was OECD's chief economist and head of economics department. He was subsequently OECD Deputy Secretary General. Surveillance by international institutions, lessons from global financial and economic crisis. And this is from 2011. He did several books or several papers. Multilateral surveillance, the IMF, and so on and so forth. So what they're really talking about there is, like I said, if you're going to tax, you need to follow the money, so to speak. All right, let's go to the OECD's website, Better Policies for Better Lives. And then we get into their mission statement. The consequences of climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss, and ocean acidification are undeniable, so they say. The climate crisis is existential, they say. So this dovetails with all the other global agencies that are pushing unfounded science, but also existential crisis, whether it's climate or anything else. What it shows is that if you're faced with an existential crisis, you must act, and that gives them the motive and the wherewithal to progress forward. Now listen to the next paragraph here. Science, innovation, digitalization, and technological progress, the technocracy, are changing the world, providing us with solutions and opportunities. While the COVID-19 crisis, another crisis, has provoked the deepest social, economic, and public health crisis since the foundation of our organization, science and industry developed safe and effective vaccines with unprecedented speed. That certainly is debatable. So you could see what issues they're buttressing. Despite technological progress, our economies are experiencing low productivity growth. Why is that? It's because of exactly what they're doing. The globalization is sucking the wealth out of countries, and so they get low productivity growth because there's no reinvestment. Goes on to say inequality has increased in terms of income, wealth, and opportunity within and between countries. Social mobility has decreased, all because of them. Demographic change, environmental degradation, the rise in global debt, private and public, may lead to rising intergenerational inequities. Excuse me, because basically that means is, remember when you were always supposed to do better than your parents? They're saying intergenerational inequities. In other words, the generations to come are never going to do better than their parents, when it was just the opposite just a few generations ago. It goes on to say the share of migrants in the world population is still rising. Why is that? Because of them, their migration policy. Migration and integration are complex and sensitive issues because there isn't integration, and they mix. I don't want to get into multiculturalism, but you understand where we're going here, which require a comprehensive and balanced approach to address both their challenges and possible benefits. There are no benefits, while respecting national competences, whatever that means. While these global challenges require effective and global responses, multilateralism is increasingly under pressure. Indeed, it is, because people like Trump. Trade and geopolitical tensions are more prominent. Globalization and open markets are viewed with increasing concern. Indeed, that is the case, without a doubt. Amidst these challenges, we reaffirm the goals of our convention and hereby set our vision for an effective and influential OECD for the next decade. We form a like-minded community. Indeed, they do. Committed to the preservation of individual liberty and values of democracy. Really, the rule of law and protection of human rights. All that is a lie, because they go into this whole thing here. We believe in the value of open trading, competitive, sustainable, and transparent market economies. No, they don't. In its 60 years of existence, the OECD has assisted both members and non-members in fostering good governance. And we've seen the good governance in the, the environmental ESG, environmental sustainable governance. They go on to say recent global crises have only brought opportunities to build back better, because that's why they cause the crises, and they make up crises as well. The accelerate a just transition. So it's a just transition. This is a nod to DEI, but also impose an obligation on us to promote more resilient systems for future generations, as was laid out in the Georgia Guidestones. Climate change adaptation and mitigation are fundamental for resilient socioeconomic and ecological systems. Basically, what they're talking about is they put forth the climate crisis so that they are rebuilding a new world order for their new world, which they're creating. And we're going to get into all that in just a second. We only have half an hour, so I'm going to go quickly. The OECD will accelerate its development of policy options to help close the gaps in well-being within and between countries, between genders, and between generations. The OECD will ensure that all its analysis, blah, 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 blah. You know what they're talking about there. You know what they're talking about there. I'll have to go back. Is that what they're doing is they are bringing, this is the global socialist system where they bring everything low. It's neo-feudalism where everybody is poor, but you're all equally poor. And that's what they're bringing, the equitable nature of their new world order is everybody will be brought low except for business titans, which they will have all the money and they will decide on what policies will go forward. Success will be determined by our ability to influence and engage with all stakeholders. You know who stakeholders are. To promote adherence to OECD standards and practices to improve transparencies and accountability, to increase global interdependence, achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And there lies the rub. The OECD will continue to enhance engagement with other multinational organizations, notably the United Nations and the WTO, also the G7, the G20, and regional organizers, APEC, OCN, CELAC, and the African Union. And then it goes through all the other, what they did for the New World Order, this global governance system. They make, smaller sub-organizations for Africa or Asia. If you have known or you had looked at the blueprints for this agenda, there are 10 global regions, and those regions will be governed by administrators who are appointed by the global body that the UN is a model for. It won't be the UN. Maybe it'll be the UN, and it'll probably be something new. All right, let's get into the news now. So, Zero Hedge is reporting, and this is why it's applicable. USAID censorship scheme exposed. Global Engagement Center worked with UK government and media firms to deploy AI tools. And just the news, this is crazy. USAID censorship nerve center collaboration with the UK. Disinfo cops wows Elon Musk. Wows me too. Oh, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to get through it pretty quickly. As the Trump administration battles courts to gut the U.S. Agency for International Development, and the shuttered Global Engagement Center reconstitutes itself like a Terminator into a purportedly foreign-only hub to counter manipulation and interference, newly released public records detail the extent of their past efforts to police speech. America First Legal, founded by Stephen Miller, posted a 210 pages of receipts Thursday from the group's 2-year Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the State Department, which last year revealed USAID's disinformation primer that spanned the end of the President Trump's first term and at least part of President Biden's early term. The document, a massive government operation, a government-backed censorship operation by USAID, indeed, with the nerve center in the UK GEC. More news from the Financial Times. European military powers work on 5 to 10 year plan to replace US in NATO. UK, France, Germany, and the Nordics among countries engaged in informal discussions over a managed transfer. The point being here is that the discussions are an attempt to avoid the chaos of unilateral U.S. withdrawal from NATO, a fear sparked by President Donald Trump's repeated threats to weaken or walk away from the transatlantic alliance that has protected Europe for almost 8 decades. Because the U.S. runs NATO for the most part. Sure, there are other member nations, it's an alliance, but the military might behind NATO is the U.S. and always has been. And the fact is NATO has done us dirty, not only in their lack of, the member countries' lack of contributions, but also in their mission and some of the things they undertook over the years, like Operation Gladio, but also fostering this Ukrainian war. So the Federalist. Up next, we're going into this rogue judges story, which is the story. I should have put it in the header, but everybody understands what this is. Rogue judges are turning judicial review into judicial rule, according to the Federalist. Bossberg's ruling is just the latest example of a judge substituting his own political preferences for executive decision-making, indeed. And if you didn't know, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, an Obama appointee, issued an order barring the administration from carrying out deportations to El Salvador. The White House called the decision lawless. Of course it is. And the order was mostly moot because the flights were already left and crossed into international waters. It has stopped further such flights for now because Trump doesn't want to step over that legal threshold, obviously. Trump's defense is already being framed as an attack on the rule of law. And then it goes on to say, for decades, American society has placed an almost sacred trust in the judiciary, elevating it above elected branches of government. That deference has emboldened judges because judges are supposed to be nonpartisan, because they're supposed to be interpreting the law. That deference has emboldened judges to expand their power, transforming the courts from interpreters of the law to de facto rulers in black robes. Saturnalia. The Church of Saturn. That's where the black robe comes from. That's why Catholic priests have it, and that's why judges have it too. The Constitution is really ministers of Satan, but I shall not digress. The Constitution and Congress grants the courts the authority to review executive action, but not to dictate governance. When a judge takes issue with the legitimate exercise of executive power, they don't defend democracy, they undermine it. Indeed, because they're undermining the actions of elected officials. But that's all. This was going on the basis that judges would never take a partisan stance or an anti-politician stance. They might not like one guy, but they're supposed to be interpreting the law. And they don't have the law to do anything, to make a decision. That's why they're just levying stays and restraining orders, injunctions to halt the progress, because they can't legitimately make a ruling on it. The Spectator is reporting Trump is working overtime to restore the rule of law. In the long term, his masculine policies will function less as a punitive expedient. So the author here, what is it? Roger Kimball. Okay, he talks about Donald Trump versus Leviathan. If you know about Thomas Hobbes' book, Leviathan, Thomas Hobbes was a 16th century pastor. But you should read the Leviathan, and also A Man of All Seasons, which the author gets into. So the author gets into his story by saying, in the matter of Donald Trump versus Leviathan, let me begin by stipulating that Sir Thomas More was right in A Man of All Seasons when he remonstrated with his future son-in-law, William Roper. Roper was urging More to arrest the scheming Richie Rich, whose machinations could eventually lead to Moore's execution. But as Moore points out, Rich had broken no law. I'm not going to get into the text too much. Why does it? I'm not going to get into the text too much there. Trump is acting. I still haven't fixed that noise gate issue. Trump is acting. So if my voice gets too low, it kind of cuts out. Trump is acting to restore the law from the depredations of lawless, indeed unconstitutional arrangements whereby the court powers of the presidency and of Congress are undermined by the unaccountable bureaucrats. Also, he is acting to rescue executive powers of the presidency from the unconstitutional interference of district court judges. It is the latter that has focused everyone's attention these last weeks as various judges have issued orders to say that the President of the United States may not fire people who work for him, that he must spend money controlled by agencies of the executive branch, and he may not deport certain illegal aliens. He goes on to say, here I remind you of the first sentence of the Article 2 of the Constitution. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. Executive, which means to execute. All right, let's move on to the domestic terrorism by the left. National Review: 3 Tesla arsonists face severe charges amid wave of domestic terrorism, the DOJ announces. Also, PJ Media: Molotov cocktail hour is over for Tesla bombers after DOJ indictments. Sadly, for 3 indicted men who were accused of going after Tesla cars for political reasons, they are learning this the hard way. On Thursday, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the severe charges against the accused Tesla arsonists. Bondi said the days of committing crimes without consequence have ended. She told domestic terrorists who are warming up in the bullpen, let this be a warning, she says. If you join this wave of domestic terrorism against Tesla, the Department of Justice will put you behind bars. Indeed. Also from Fox News, Trump warns of jail time for Tesla vandals. Anyone funding the attack, we are looking for you. Trump said people sabotaging Teslas and whoever is funding the attacks across the country stand a very good chance of going to jail. And I hope that this is the case, that folks that are actually funding these miscreants on the street, that they, in fact, will get some jail time. Reuters exclusive: Tesla trade-ins on pace for record high amid Musk backlash. So I pointed out this yesterday. So it was BYD, I think, the Chinese, the communist electric car company. So, and we're going to get a little bit into communism in a second, but what I'm talking about here is that the people that are fighting Tesla, it's an American company, are benefiting the communist Chinese that use slave labor, that are not interested. The communist Chinese are not interested in multiculturalism, just so you know. They're not really interested in any culture other than Maoist culture, and they're not interested in DEI, right? They are interested in dominating America. And so if they're trying to do that and you're helping them by destroying an American EV company and boosting BYD, which is already the Chinese electric vehicle companies are already above and beyond any other car manufacturer, electric car, EV car manufacturer trading in the world. They're everywhere because they're cheap and they're stylish. They're much cheaper than Teslas. And so by bringing down Musk because he's the enemy, you don't like him because of what? If you're a taxpayer, you should like what he's doing. But, most of these miscreants in the street don't pay taxes. More news from Zero Hedge. Fake news again. Trump dismisses claim that Musk will be briefed on potential war plans with China. Now, this is a big story. The story here is that, I'll just go to the story here. Wall Street Journal also reported Musk set to receive top secret briefings on U.S. war plans for China. The Trump advisor, Elon Musk, is expected to get a look at the Pentagon blueprint despite his company's financial stakes in China. So both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal echoed the same thing that Trump said didn't happen. So here's the New York Times story. Pentagon set up briefing for Musk on potential war with China The access would be a major expansion of Elon Musk's government role and highlight his conflicts of interest. Okay, so yes, he makes some cars in China. Does he have a relationship? Elon Musk has a relationship with China. But who knows? This may be a false story. We're going to get into the story in just a second, and I'll show you why. But what they're doing is they're creating a narrative, which is, again, benefiting China. So if you're going to saber rattle with China, we're going to have a friggin' problem. Okay, because there's no reason to say, A, we're setting up to have combat with China, but this is what you're telegraphing them. And then you're saying that Elon Musk is involved in planning a war for China. So what do you think the Chinese communists are going to do? They're going to kick out all his manufacturing and close down his businesses in China, which will hurt the company even more. So this story is a way to sink Tesla. So there's no truth to this, and I'm going to tell you why. So the Pentagon was scheduled on Friday to brief Elon Musk on the U.S. military plan for any war that might break out with China. 2 U.S. officials said on Thursday. Who are these U.S. officials? We don't know. Another official, an unnamed official, said the briefing would be focused without providing additional details. A fourth official confirmed Mr. Musk was to be at the Pentagon briefing on Friday. No further details. Hours after news of the planned meeting was published by the New York Times, Pentagon officials and the President Trump denied that the session would be about military plans involving China. China will not even be mentioned or discussed, Mr. Trump said in a late-night social media post. Well, that's my whole point, is that Trump said it wasn't going to happen. The story goes on to say, it would also bring in a sharp relief the questions about Mr. Musk's conflict of interest as he ranges widely across the federal bureaucracy while continuing to run his business that are major government contractors. In this case, Mr. Musk, the billionaire and chief executive of both SpaceX, Tesla, is leading supplier to the Pentagon and has extensive financial interests in China. So even though Elon Musk had military contracts with military contracts with the United States and had a business relationship with China, despite that, he was allowed to have that. Despite that relationship, he was allowed to have that relationship. So he worked with the U.S. military and worked with China. Unlike Google, who said, I'm not going to work with the U.S. military, I'm just going to work with China. What does that say? So you're going to have to excuse me here. I'm just trying to alleviate some technical difficulties. But we're going to move on to the next story. So the National Review says there are no lone wolves. Ayaan Hirsi Ali dismantled the new popular narrative on Islamic terrorism. What is she talking about? She talks about, speaking at National Review Institute Idea Summit on Thursday, Ali pushed back on the popular lone wolf narrative used to explain recent acts of Islamic terror, like the perpetrated on Bourbon Street in New Orleans earlier this year, arguing instead that terrorism is one tactic used by a global Islamic network that is pursuing broader, unrecognized strategy. The network, Ali argued, advances its goals by infiltrating American institutions and spreading its propaganda throughout ostensibly nonviolent Islamist groups. So when you're talking about the guy that's, at Colombia that may be deported, this indeed is the case. Just like any other Any other activist that takes action is wittingly or unwittingly controlled by larger forces. So, guys that were heading up the Black Lives Matter demonstrations that would pull up in BMWs, they were getting their money from somewhere, but their charges didn't know where their leaders were getting money from, and so on and so forth. So it could easily be proved time and time again that people with large political activist ideas are being controlled by money that they might not even know exactly where it comes from. But this connects with the larger conspiracy that is socialism. The PJ Media is reporting the son of refugees of communism warns commie American youth. Who is this? Elad Veda, in an op-ed for Campus Reform, wrote, "Communism is a cancer on history, and very few other ideas have rivaled it for sheer human misery." Indeed. The Holodomor in Ukraine. Just for one. And yet American academics and influencers are singing the praises of communism, a situation which Veda understandably believes to be very dangerous. For instance, popular TikTok influencer Madeline Pendleton made the utterly false assertion that countries under communist Marxist Leninist leadership are flourishing. That's never. Communist fiscal theory is flawed. The only reason it was sort of working here was just the faith in the US dollar. So such propaganda has 25% of college-age Americans convinced that communism is a good system, even at my conservative Catholic college, says the author. There were a number of students and professors who waxed poetic on the charms of socialism and communism, but when challenged, never could explain just how such theories would ever even or could possibly be applied successfully in reality. It's the same thing. It's like, oh, but look at Soviet Russia. Oh, well, that's because Stalin was corrupt. Oh, it was because of this. Oh, but Mao didn't have it right, but now they fixed it. But it made them feel mostly extremely virtuous and top lofty to lecture about the theories anyway. And they're talking about people within academia who like to go on about Marxist-Leninist theory, which, by the way, was developed by the elite. Marx was not some lowly factory worker. He was a ne'er-do-well son of prominent attorneys, and his cohort, his partner in crime, was Frederick Engels, who was the son of an industrialist. So, and this is modern socialist theory. The actual Jacobin theory also comes from the elite, but I'm not going to digress too much. I'm going to move on to the next story, which is Just the News reporting. Meet the pro-CCP Marxist revolutionary group behind the Mahmoud Khalil protests. So this dovetails into the other article about Hersey. The People's Forum helped organize some of the campus chaos and is now organizing protests to free Khalil. Now, there are other groups too. Columbia University Apartheid Divest is the pro-Palestinian anti-Israel group that sparked many of the student encampments on Columbia University. Khalil was a lead negotiator for Columbia University Apartheid Divest as the group occupied buildings on Columbia's campus in the wake of the deadly Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th, 2023. A former Ciudad leader, Kimani James, said that Zionists do not deserve to live. And there's more. The People's Forum has been a driving force behind the protests, condemning the detention and possible deportation of Khalil. There are scores of videos posted by the forum and social media detailing the group's role in organizing, promoting, attending, and leading the pro-Khalil protests, including a rally outside the New York City courthouse and a sit-in in the Trump Tower. Khalil's legal team addressed the crowd at the protest by the Forum. There's no indication that Khalil himself was involved in the protest by the People's Forum, which is the communist, Chinese communist one. It goes on to say the communist group has connected to its pro-Khalil efforts to its broader base shut it down for Palestine street protest campaign in its fight against ICE being allowed on campus. The group said that it will take to the streets and demand the immediate release of Mahmoud Khalil and reaffirm our commitment to struggle for a free Palestine. The Forum urged protesters to be all out for Mahmoud Khalil. Wow. There's a lot to get through, and we're running out of time. There's still a lot more to go, so let's get into it. Next up, from the post-millennial, OMG, which is Oh My God, or O'Keefe Media Group, MGM Casino Marketing Director caught on hidden camera. I'm not going to hire whites. No matter how great the whites look on paper, they don't fit well with my team. The story goes on to say that this guy was dismissing white applicants in favor of DEI. Albie Velarde, director of casino marketing at MGM Springfield, I guess that's in Massachusetts, spoke with an undercover journalist from O'Keefe Media Group, revealing his hiring approach. I'd probably hire the African-American, Velarde said, emphasizing that he looks for diverse-based hires while rejecting white candidates regardless of their qualifications. National Review, Wisconsin girls say school penalized them for refusing to share locker rooms with male classmate. What? 2 high school girls in Wisconsin were changing clothes in the girls' locker room last year when they were surprised to find a male classmate sharing what they believed was a female-only space. When the girls' parents expressed their daughter's concerns, the administrator of the school refused to take action. The parents claimed instead a gym teacher told the girls not to worry about it and said that the opposing boys' presence in the girl locker room would be considered bullying. Can't bully a trans person, apparently. More news. TJ Media, New York tops court rules non-citizen voting in New York City election is unconstitutional and quite naturally illegal. New York's highest court struck down New York City's controversial law allowing non-citizens to vote in a 6-1 decision limiting voting only to citizens after a 3-year legal battle. Wow. It is certainly a blow to Democrats. Liberal judges on the New York State Court of Appeals sided with the conservative colleagues on March 20th to reject the law as unconstitutional, a major victory for voter integrity. Indeed. Non-citizens shouldn't be allowed to vote, not in state elections, not in municipal elections, certainly, and it is in the Constitution, not in federal elections. PJ Media says, Tom Homan says, U.S. borders are closed. In this post to X, U.S. borders are closed to lawbreakers today. Numerous dangerous gang members were sent to Guantanamo Bay, once again ensuring violent, criminal, illegal aliens remain far away from American neighborhoods. Know this, our neighborhoods are sealed shut to you, and recent flights to El Salvador and other countries, deportation flights are talking about, will resume. Because of this interference by these activist judges that are trying to block Trump. And so he's juggling, send them to Guantanamo Bay, which, because they're not illegal combatants, enemy combatants. And so that could be unlawful. But certainly sending immigrants, deporting immigrants is the right of the president of the United States to do. So those flights will resume, but they're just trying to delay, deny, defend. They try to delay what the opposition is doing. They deny saying that's their purpose, that it's a partisan purpose. And then when it's proven that they are indeed doing it, then they defend their action. because Trump is Hitler. All right, Just the News is reporting former squad Representative Cori Bush's husband charged with wire fraud related to the COVID relief funds. Former Democrat Missouri Rep. Cori Bush's husband on Thursday was charged with 2 counts of wire fraud for allegedly accepting $20,000 in payments from the Paycheck Protection and Economic Injury Disaster Loan Programs. Federal prosecutors accused Bush's husband, Courtney Merritt's, of falsifying information to get loans from the Small Business Administration during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021. The alleged lies included a number of people he allegedly employed and his business revenue. This is the tip of the iceberg. He is a small fish in this fraud that Biden perpetrated by allowing millions, billions, tens of billions, even hundreds of billions of dollars to be scammed through not verifying applications for assistance during COVID. And then there was even more done in the subsequent bills. Every single Democratic bill was a grift. So they set themselves up as a company. We need money. And here comes the check. And then a bunch of the billions of dollars also went to NGOs. And all these things is a web. It's a conspiracy of liberals and progressives funneling money around to push their agenda. Unfortunately, culturally, it's not working. Fox News is reporting comedian Andrew Schultz says Democrats' coolness factor is long gone. Party is no longer dominating culture. Schultz claimed that the perceptions of the two parties in America have completely switched, with Dems losing decades-long grip on culture. And he went on to say, comedian Andrew Schultz told Fox News Digital that Democrats have completely lost their coolness factor. According to Schultz, when he was growing up, Democrats were seen as the cool party while Republicans were seen as corny. Over the last 2 years, though, he's noticed that these certain sentiments surrounding the two political parties have completely switched. He says, when I was a kid, Democrats were getting laid left and right. Like, they would listen to whatever music they wanted to listen to, say whatever words they wanted to say. They were the cool ones. Not necessarily. Remember Tipper Gore? So Al Gore's wife. Al Gore is a Democrat, Mr. Environmental. Well, his wife led the a parent group to label, and still what you see today, label music with parental guidelines. So I don't think his assessment was correct. That he's the corny comedian with the mustachio. But he's a young guy, so he doesn't know very much. Politically naive. All right, Just the News facing $1 billion shortfall. LA may eliminate entire departments. According to city officials, thousands of city employees could be fired. Entire departments could be eliminated in next year's budget, set to be unveiled next month. The city controller, Kevin Mayas, says the city's going broke. Why would that be? Thousands of layoffs. We're not looking at dozens or even hundreds of layoffs, but thousands. Fox News, Gwyneth Paltrow, who I guess is still in LA, is fascinated by MAHA, Make America Healthy Again movement, say many institutions are really failing us. The Goop founder has been a wellness advocate for years, but she doesn't really understand the Trump movement. The people on the right are the people in the know, the people that have been scouring the internet for little bits of information and that they have photographic memories and can put it all together and say, oh my God, the corporations are really making us sick. It's your environment. Whoops. Just the News California ban on standard capacity gun magazines is ruled unconstitutional by Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit, really? What a surprise. Oh my God. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled California's ban on standard capacity gun magazines is constitutional, overturning a lower court ruling. It's such bullshit, this back and forth. The standard firearm today is a semi-automatic rifle or pistol, okay, that takes magazines and is gas-fed. Simple as that. Do they have the right possibly to limit magazine capacity? Sure. But saying you can't have magazines for a firearm is ridiculous. And this is the left's push, just like Canada, to move everything. You could only have a bolt-action rifle. So as I often say about gun legislation is criminals don't adhere to gun laws. And so a criminal could have an illegal weapon, and then you're sitting there with your bolt-action rifle, you know, trying to get up some shots when he probably has a fully automatic machine pistol or what have you. It should always be on equal footing. Anyway, citing New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Brune, a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that requires that gun control laws be consistent with the nation's historical precedent of firearms regulation. District Court Judge Roger Benitez ruled that the standard capacity magazine ban unconstitutional in 2023. California Attorney General Rob Bonta appealing the ruling before it went into effect. The Ninth Circuit majority opinion found that magazines as optional accessories. They are not protected firearms, protected accessory under the Second Amendment. It's ruled that the ban falls within the general precedent, protecting innocent persons by prohibiting especially dangerous uses of weapons by regulating components. All right, so I'm not a lawyer or anything, but a magazine is not an optional accessory. Can the device operate without it? The answer is no. So it's certainly not optional. I don't know, these people, they're strictly partisan because realistically, what would be understanding is that they're acting partisan to get gun laws passed to eliminate firearm ownership completely. It's not an optional accessory. It's not a protected accessory. Innocent persons by prohibiting especially dangerous use of weapons by regulating the components. Well, it can't work without a magazine. All right, more news. We got to move quickly now. RFK extends 2017 opioid public health emergency protecting role of Medicare. Kennedy's 90-day extension of the declaration would have expired March 21st. Comes as street dealers across the nation are now switching to the synthetic opioids that are more potent, such as fentanyl. CDC and prevention estimates drug overdoses nationally declined 24% by 2024. We went over that stat yesterday. Fox News Green calls for yanking FDA approval of COVID-19 vaccines causing permanent harm and deaths. Stop the COVID-19 vaccines. Green declared on a post on X. FDA approval of COVID-19 vaccines needs to be pulled and they need to be taken off the childhood vaccine schedule ASAP. Indeed, shouldn't be on the schedule. Just like a flu shot shouldn't be on the schedule. I've been saying this ever since they were created, and my personal Twitter account was permanently banned for my outspoken stance against the vaccines until Elon Musk bought Twitter, changed it to X, and restored my account along with thousands of people who were censored and silenced during this problem with COVID-19 and vaccines. More news from the Washington Times. Johnson & Johnson plans $55 billion in U.S. investments over the next 4 years. That's outstanding. That is outstanding. Medical press. Would you let a robot draw your blood? Northwestern among health systems trying new device. Well, they're getting robots and AI to do everything now. Are gearing up to try a new way of drawing blood using a robot. Northwestern is among several health systems that have agreed to be part of a clinical trial that a device that automates blood collection. Yuck. Northwestern, the company behind the device, says the potential to make blood draws more efficient while helping healthcare systems deal with a shortage of phlebotomists, who are people trained in collecting of blood samples, probably because they won't take white applicants. And another thing is phlebotomists a lot of time can't get the vein. And so are robots going to be more or less efficient? The Independent reports AI breakthrough is revolution in weather forecasting. So now AI is predicting the weather. And Forbes has the headline, Risk or Revolution, Will AI Replace Lawyers? Over the past few years, a growing number of legal professionals have embraced AI tools to boost efficiency and reduce costs. According to recent figures, nearly 73% of legal experts now plan to incorporate AI into the daily operations. 65% of law firms agree that effective use of a generative AI will separate the successful and unsuccessful law firms in the next 5 years. All AI, all jobs will be affected by AI and robotics the next 5 years in the next decade. Before 2030 is a start for the New World Order, so we'll see what happens. Trump will be out of power, and we don't know. It looks like the establishment is staying with their goal to get, by Christmas 2030, to get us onto the New World Order. That means deposing and displacing most humans. Washington Post, Democrats are angry, disillusioned over the failure to stand up to Trump and Musk. Waiting in a line that snaked around the Las Vegas park, many said they came to look into the two progressive populist leaders for the direction, a strategy to push back against Trump administration at a time when they don't see the Democratic Party offering one. And this is a bunch of people went to see AOC and Bernie Sanders, and people said, I'm scared to death for my country. We're sitting on our behinds, talking a lot. When are we going to actually do something? Well, you can burn down a Tesla dealership. These people are whacked. What Trump is doing is for the best of the country, and he's unwinding the damage that was done post-trauma with the Biden administration. New York Post, Kennedy Center contractor fired after posting bizarre naked monologue bashing president's takeover. Fuck Donald Trump, he said. Contract worker at the Kennedy Center was fired after he stripped naked and delivered a prattling monologue in a video posted online. Tavish Forsyth was a program director at the Kennedy Center's Opera Institute. 35-minute clip. Trump has taken over the Kennedy Center, and that's the place where I work. Said a clothed Forsyth, and then he appeared naked. He vowed to ban drag performers from the center stage. As the saying goes, we're all born naked, and the rest is drag. I guess that's a saying. And so he performatively deliberates on whether he should resign from his position while exposing his genitals. Fuck Donald Trump at the Kennedy Center, he said. And then apparently this guy is, he works with children also in the Opera Institute at the Kennedy Center. So now he's posing naked. I don't under, if you don't have an intellectual argument, go the fuck away. If you can't make your intellectual argument, get someone else to make it for you. All right, but performative exercise or violent action. That's all the left has. Reuters, FBI scales back staffing tracking on domestic terrorism probes. The only thing is they're getting rid of the counter to the white supremacist and anti-government extremists, supposedly, that everybody was freaked out about on the right. Well, on the left, they were freaked about all these, the conservatives are all racist, white supremacists, all this shit. It was all lies that the former president actually engaged in. Nobody's buying it. It's a lie. I'm not saying they're not white supremacists out there, but in such few numbers, the only way that their numbers are ever bolstered is by involvement of the FBI. I think it's the last story here. InfoWars host Owen Schroyer swatted after police report of shooting. I'll just show a picture of him from his surveillance camera outside his house. Shows them the FBI or whoever, local SWAT, showing up with their ARs drawn. They could have magazines. The police can have magazines, but you can't. So there's the picture of that. Schroyer called the law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, to investigate what he called Democrat terrorism, drawing comparisons to legal battles faced by President Trump and other conservative figures. So, yeah, I didn't report on this yesterday. I should have. That he got swatted the other day. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe. For a little over an hour. Share the podcast. Remember, you're under attack, psychologically, biologically. I got a lot of tech stuff going on here, so I hope the audio was okay. It might be a little hot. But I was kind of like fixing a lot of stuff here, so I'll have to look at the playback and make sure everything's okie dokie. But thanks for joining me today. Don't forget, you're under attack. Join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. or that around there, that about. It is Friday. Happy Friday. Check me out on social media, X, Facebook, Get Our Minds, True Social, Substack. Check out my other website, libpop.org. Learn about libertarian populism. And check out links in the description for Liberty merch. If you click on that link, it takes you to Alex Jones' store. If you buy products there, I get a couple bucks. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Respect.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.